This video comes to us from Shahid Iqbal, and he says, "Hi sir, I'm doing English Literature AQA. I've written an essay on an inspector calls. I've tried to follow all your advice from previous videos. However, I found this question very challenging. Could you please give it a grade or a band and possibly make a video on it?" Yes, I can. So let's look at his question. How do you respond to Gerald in an inspector calls? How does Priestley make you respond as you do by the way he writes? Okay, we've got a very short introduction, which is a good use of your time. Do you state what your point of view is? The character of Gerald is used by Priestley as a tool to show the audience the egregious behaviours of some members of society. Yes, you do explain your point of view, but you really could make something of the fact that they're not any members of the society. They are the ruling classes, the business classes. They represent the capitalist system. This is an opportunity for you to use that context to discuss Priestley's view. You'll notice that I've highlighted quite a few of your commas in yellow. This is the comma splice, where you're using a comma instead of a full stop. And you'll also notice it happens frequently before the word this. That's not just you, many of my students do that, and it's something to be avoided. So whenever you're using the word this, think carefully. You probably need a full stop before it. Right, through admitting his involvement with Eva Smith in front of the Burlings, Gerald is seen to be very regretful and he feels very ashamed. Perfect point. You need a quotation to back it up now. This is delineated by his absence for a considerable part of the second and third act. Okay, so instead of the quotation, you've got a reference. It's a good one. It's a structural one, and tactically getting your structural point in early is very good. Often we'll forget it if you don't get it in early. So the structural choice was made by Priestley to convey to the reader, remember we're an audience, we're not readers, how one's wrongdoings can appear so much worse when admitted in public. And Gerald's behaviour exemplifies this. In a way, Priestley is asking the audience to carefully consider what we do, because it can actually be so much worse than we think. Well, you're right, but you're being general here. So what he's really talking about is how we treat other people, especially the working class, because what we do can have long-lasting consequences, such as Eva's suicide. And you need to spell that out specifically. Never make general points. Always be as specific as you can. Gerald is also seen to be a character who's very fake, often ignoring how he impacts society. This is a really good point. I hope you're going to explain how he impacts society. This is shown when he describes himself as, should be, one of the respectable citizens. The choice of the word citizens instead of people is very revealing. The word citizens conveys that he is respectable in the eyes of the public, but he may not be privately, as shown by his involvement with Eva Smith. So this is a very sophisticated point, and it's all turns on this use of the word citizens. That makes it an embedded quotation that's dealt with in some complexity here. Alternatively, this means you're looking at more than one interpretation and you're consequently evaluating, which is normally at the top of the mark scheme, in the highest grades. This could also represent what Gerald gives importance to, his public image. This interpretation shows that Gerald may not be considering real moral purposes, but he's only preoccupied by his public image. Well done, that's a very well made point. This insight into his thought process is rendered very disadvantageous to society when Priestley leaves us with his final message of being responsible for one another. You really need to spell out why that's disadvantageous to society. It's a very good introduction to the idea, but you must again be specific. Gerald is nevertheless very regretful about his actions. He's very upset about what he has done. Again, good integrated quotation there. This short moment of remorse shows to the audience that even the most heartless people can be made to reflect and admit to what they've done. through the inspector's somewhat Socratic discussion. Gerald, for a short time, understands his social responsibility. Well, you desperately need a quotation to show how he understands his responsibility. Is it this one? Well, perhaps, but you need to link it to what he says about just realizing that she's dead. Something like that would help. What do you mean by a Socratic discussion? That's normally a discussion that's designed to teach a moral lesson. Is that worth pointing out here? And he is most heartless people. Again, specifically, he represents the ruling capitalist class. You need to spell that out here. This is too general. Okay, however, this doesn't last long, since at the end of the play, in the denouement, Gerald is the character who proposes the idea of the inspector being a hoax. This is a very good link here, and you're looking at Gerald from an alternative perspective. Again, an A and A-star skill. He's rather pleased with himself and is seen to be smiling. Very good use again of that single word quotation. This behaviour demonstrates that whatever happens, some people will never learn, and Gerald is an example of this. He smiles as though nothing happened in a successful attempt to hide his unscrupulous actions. Good, but what were those unscrupulous actions? Here you might discuss how innocent he was in setting Eva up in his friend's flat. Did he in fact plan to install a woman there ever since he took the keys from his friends? How much should we trust him when he says he was just trying to help Eva out? Here, Priestley portrays how some people never learn. And again, I've highlighted some people because it's general and not specific, and you need to keep coming back to how this is an attack on the capitalist ruling class, or if you prefer, an attack on men, but be specific. In conclusion, we have seen that Priestley uses Gerald as a tool to exemplify the behaviours of the problematic members of society. Well, lovely vocabulary again, but who are these problematic members? Who do they represent? Again, these are symbolic constructs, and we really are, with Priestley, talking about the hard-headed businessman that Berling talks about. We're talking about the ruling classes. We're talking about rich men. He also attempts to show how even the most heartless people can recognise their wrongdoings, but also makes us realise that they will never actually learn, since they are too preoccupied by their public image. The audience are thus enticed to think about how their actions may affect others. That's a very good twist there. So in our thinking about Gerald, we're encouraged to think about ourselves. Priestley does leave us with a final message, though, in regards to characters like Gerald. They will learn in fire, blood and anguish. Well, what will they learn in fire and blood and anguish? And why? Why will they learn it? And you need to link that to this idea of Gerald rejecting the inspector's teaching. And when you're writing a conclusion, you can't afford to leave out, whichever character you're writing about, you can't afford to leave out their last moments in the play, because their last moments in the play are what Priestley wants us most to consider about them. That's when we decide whether they've learnt anything on their journey, whether they've changed, or whether they haven't changed at all. And I would suggest that in An Inspector Calls, Gerald has not changed, which is why he and the Burlings and the Crofts are likely to learn their lesson in fire and blood and anguish, because there will be strikes, there will be the First World War, there'll be the Great Depression, and there'll be the Second World War. All of those would be included in the inspector's warning, and the reason that those happen is that the capitalist ruling classes exploit the working classes without mercy. So hopefully this has helped you look at your essay and how to improve it. Interestingly, it's only 487 words long, which is probably about a page and a half of A4 in 45 minutes. That's what I would expect from a C or B grade student. Your vocabulary is far above that, and so are your ideas, but I hope you can see the weakness in the brevity of what you're writing when I'm asking you to give further examples or further quotations and thoughts. I'm now going to use the AQA mark scheme for two reasons. One, it's the most popular, so it'll be the most relevant to most of you, but also any mark scheme for whatever exam board really kind of says the same thing. It has to, otherwise GCSE grades in one board wouldn't be equivalent to GCSE grades in another. So really they're all pretty much the same. Well, let's start down into a band 5 here. Are you exploratory? So do you consider more than one point of view? Yes, occasionally you do. Are you analytical in your use of details? Yes, you look at single word quotations and try to tease out what they imply. Do you look at the language and or the structure and or the form? Yes, you have looked partly at the structure, and you do continually look at the language, and you're always talking about the effects on the audience, and you explore ideas and themes. But this is your weakest point, because you're very general in this part and not specific, as I tried to show you. So an examiner might bump you up into this band, but they'd have reservations because of this bit. If we look up here, what does insightful exploratory mean compared to exploratory? Well, it doesn't mean anything, does it? It's just a gut reaction for the examiner. Close analysis of detail. Close analysis would imply that you're writing a lot more. Every time you look at a quotation, you've got more to say about it. And 480 odd words isn't going to be enough. So you've just snuck in to the bottom of band 5 here. Now bear in mind that if I got 6 teachers to grade your essay using criteria, they'd probably all come up with a slightly different mark. But if I said to them, what's your gut reaction? Is it an A or a B or an A star? They'd probably go between B plus and A minus for your essay, look at the length and bring you down to the B plus. So I hope that's helped you. Good luck with your revision, and if you'd like any more videos, don't forget to subscribe.